Hi, this is your head coach, Steve Hopkins with Jordan River Group, and we are here for a lesson in the behavior of results orientation. Okay, today we're going to be talking a little bit about performance reporting and feedback, all right, as it pertains to getting the kind of results we want, all right? So maybe just to frame this real quickly, why is this a problem? Well, there's a lot of recent statistics out that show that the vast majority of people feel like the feedback they get isn't even helpful to them. Sometimes 2/3 to 3/4 of the people surveyed, and this could be an experience you've had as well. I feel like the feedback I've gotten hasn't really been helpful to me. So it's like, wow, that's a big issue because we think we're giving effective feedback to produce change or to at least nudge focus areas that we want to have improvement on, and it's not even helping. All right, so what do we want to think about as we're queuing up giving feedback, talking about performance, and some key takeaways that we want to just talk about this. So I'm going to give you one really key problem step that we do, and then we'll cover about eight quick things to keep in mind as we think about this, okay? So the first thing is, number one problem that we have, the number one disruption, the number one thing that makes this whole thing typically go wrong. All right, so we're just gonna kind of push this up here. We'll say number one, but we'll use the word unsolicited. Unsolicited, okay? So that means we're giving feedback on our time schedule when we think it's needed. And of course, many of us would say, wow, I'm the boss. I think I have the right to give feedback when and how I want. And clearly that's true, but we're talking about being dialed into effectiveness here, right? Success, all right, success. And so with one simple change, you can make massive improvements in how your feedback has an impact. All right, we don't want to just give feedback to hurt somebody or to make a point. We're really doing it if we really think about it. I want to think about my feedback. Why? Because I want to make a difference. I want to make an improvement. I want to have it have a positive impact. And so a lot of the times, unsolicited means unwanted, timeliness, the way, whatever. Okay, and so one simple hack here. Again, this takes a little bit of ego check, if you would, but just a simple step of asking. You can kind of ask if, really, if, how, when. All right. It just sounds like something like this. It'd be like, hey, John, I was wondering if you would be interested in some feedback on that project you finished up last week. Like, as a sincere question. What's the worst thing John can say? No, not interested at all. It's like, okay, well, listen, I do have some feedback, so I'd like you to think about when might be a good time for us to chat about that, okay? Because I do want to give that to you in a timely way. That's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is that they just appreciate you asking and say, would you rather do it over a cup of coffee or come into the office? Again, you're handling this unsolicited issue and you're asking for the dialogue, because right away that's going to disarm them, and they've also opted into the process, which is really important. All right, remember, feedback and reporting is a two-way street, not a one-way street. It's a two-way street, okay? And so we need some dialogue, and we'll get to some other key points here. But the first step that you can do is changing it to something they agree to and they say they want, and they might even give you a hint how they like to have it best. Remember, in human intelligence, there's lots and lots of information in there about how people like to be communicated with. So you can use those tools if your team is on there, but the simple way of just asking is awesome. All right, so now let's go through some other tips here, and we'll get through this really quick. Some of these you may know and are diehard favorites of yours, but we'll write the word specific. All right, you can just jot these down here. You can look at this video over time as well. Being specific with your feedback, not in general terms like good or bad or whatever, but specific, like this part of it really surprised me because I thought you had it, and we didn't get these 2 pieces done by Thursday. Something like that. Just being very, very specific is a helpful reminder when we're talking about this, all right? One of my favorite words now, include this, right? Include empathy in the feedback, all right? Sometimes we know this because we get worked up getting ready to give feedback, right? It's not easy, or we're going to feel bad. We don't want somebody to take it the wrong way. So we're kind of leaning into empathy, but really take a thought about the person that you're getting ready to give feedback to. Understand what else they might be going on in their lives, in their work lives. How is this assignment? Could even ask them some questions along the way to kind of get into that empathetic, so we don't stay inside our head and just be like, I have my agenda and that's the most important thing. If we can get inside of their space a little bit, it can be helpful as well. Okay, number 4. All right, this kind of goes along with being unsolicited, but don't wait. Well, let's just say don't wait. What I'll say, so just write don't wait down there. That's probably good. I like to really think about it, like, don't wait until the quarterly review, or the worse yet, the yearly review, if you're on that kind of schedule. All right, lots of HR theories about giving feedback and doing reviews and things like that, but if we're doing performance reporting about a thing right then, don't wait. All right, don't wait for that kind of conversation where you're trying to sum everything all up together. All right, get this out and make sure it's attached to a thing, as opposed to being just in general about how life is and how your job's going. All right, that's important as well. Here's one that's usually pretty intuitive, but I like to mention it. Right, nothing breaks trust more than somebody feeling like something they thought should have been more private became more public. Right, we all have examples of that experience, and it's damaging. And it makes this process very dysfunctional. Certainly, it puts a line in the sand, so to speak, about any future performance conversations and how you're going to have difficulties there. In fact, you could have inherited that type of person who's been injured before because of privacy, and you're dealing with the ill effects of that. So just keep that up. This one's a little more strategic that I think about. I'm just going to write the word don't sandwich. All right, what do I mean by that? There's a lot of people out there with theories that start with one thing good, finish, do the critical thing, and end with one thing good. I probably can defend some value of that, but the reality is we want to really think about this and say, I want to have a conversation about this specific thing. All right, and I'll talk about other things, and we have to make sure we do follow up with other things that kind of round that out, that the person does still have some good qualities, they did some other good work. Again, you could be having a performance conversation about good things. It doesn't all have to be about negative, all right? But we want to keep it on point so that they're not trying to feel like, what's the takeaway here? What part is most important, okay? There's like 4 messages happening here. I'm kind of confused about what the message is. So don't sandwich it with other stuff just to make it seem less of an issue. Make sure it's the bold point that you want to make and it stands out really clearly. All right, we're getting close to the end here. I like making a 2-way conversation. We spend a lot of time talking about questions, right? And so use questions in this conversation. Every time you feel like dialogue is one way, is a great time to add some questions, right? And we do this in parenting all the time, right? It's like we're talking and your child's not speaking, right? It's like they're kind of shut down and you're just kind of telling them. Questions can kind of help that be a 2-way conversation, and make sure you're gathering information, sharing ideas, talking about their perspective on things as well, and that can be very, very helpful as far as performance reporting. The thing to remember about this is you're thinking about this moment of this conversation. The reality is you want to think about the whole relationship and the next 2 or 3 or 4 conversations you're going to have as well. And these principles help set the building blocks to that, okay? All right, last two, and then we'll be done. We're going to focus on performance. All right, performance, not personality. Okay, it's very difficult, and it's really difficult for somebody that's immature in business also to not defend themselves with personality type things, or telling you you're attacking their personality, or they use that as a deflection, and sometimes we get sucked into it. Okay, so we just want to make sure we don't focus on performance. It's not about you. It's about how we delivered this. All right, and even on the upside, it's like, hey, we don't want to attach our thoughts about how great a person they are with great work. All right, because then it's like, well, that's the formula for success. Now, the great work was the outcome that we were after, and so really good job with that. You know, you met the deadlines, you did the work, and it came out the way we wanted. I just want to tell you the work was great. Performance is awesome. Okay, so we just want to separate those two things a little bit. Okay, and then last one, we're always so focused to the finish line, but kind of like what I mentioned before, this is always about the next conversation. All right, not just the success or your grade of the current conversation. All right, and so your ability to follow up and just check in with them the next day. Hey, how you doing after that conversation we had? Or did you have any follow-up questions that you thought about since we spoke? Most of the times we're so happy to get the book closed and kind of put it away. It's like, ooh, I got done with that tough conversation. I'm glad I'm past it. And again, have the perspective that this is a long-term relationship. Improvement is long-term. Performance builds and is long-term. And so we want to lay the stones down for a successful progression in the next conversation, next one. Imagine having the hardest conversation be first one, the next one gets easier, next one after that gets easier, and not just easier, but more productive with better results. You can accomplish that with having some follow-up and just checking in with them. Think if hey, had you thought anything you disagreed with after that? It seemed like you were a little quiet when we talked. I'm interested in your feedback. And hey, do you feel like that from that last conversation, you're really ready to step back into this next project? Things like that are really easy follow-up questions, right? So this should give you a pretty good heads up focus on the ways to navigate this in a positive way, and all starting with one. I think number one is that magic formula that so many people forget about, and they just don't remember that unsolicited feedback already drops in its success rate. Okay, and so there's nothing wrong even with saying I need to do this in a timely fashion rather quickly. You can still ask when within reason that would work for them, and you're going to get a lot better results. All right, feel free to ping back with questions. Use this information on your coaching calls. Talk about your experiences, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the other side of the river.